I got sent out for a Playmate test shoot with some pretty big Playmates, and they didn't know that I was a stripper. Nobody knew, even Playboy didn't know. They pushed me in a car and they cart me off, and I'm going, wait a second, we're supposed to be shooting, like what's happening? Where are you guys taking me? She comes up to me and says, I created this circumstance, so I'm going to give you this spiritual cleansing ritual. She covers my eyes, she covers my head, and then I hear the sound of a chicken. Mom, I call her, she's like, what? And I go, I know this is kind of out of the blue, but I'm reading my Bible. And then all of a sudden, my hands go to the top of the bed and my feet go to the bottom of the bed. And it feels like something has got me strapped to the bed.
Hello and welcome back to the Almost False podcast, where I interview regular people with incredible stories. Today's guest is a former Playboy model, and that might be the least crazy thing about her life. Her testimony is made up of a bunch of different stories, some of which you've heard in the intro, and they all get more intense as the story unfolds. It's the equivalent of 4 testimonies packed into one, so don't make the mistake of thinking it's over when it's not. But before the crazy ending comes the beginning, so let's start there and explain how a good Christian girl from a tiny high school became a stripper and a Playboy model. Here is the life story of Julia Jordan.
So I actually met a girl on campus that had a great purse, and she had her nails done, and she never looked stressed out, and she was always having fun. And I don't know, I was sharing with her about how stressed I was and how I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills and keep my grades up. And she said, oh my gosh, you're so cute. You can make so much money doing what I do. And she invited me to a stripping contest. She goes, I work at a strip club and nobody knows it. You can wear a wig if you want. And it's downtown. It's like 2 hours away. You can come to my club and see what it's like. Just enter their amateur contest. And if you don't like it, no big deal. Nobody will know you downtown. And I said, okay, I'm willing to give it a try. At this point, I'm being open-minded to everything because I've been so closed in my life, closed to music, closed to clothes, closed to everything. I said, what have I missed out on? I want to make up for all that lost time. I want to dive into what the world is really like. And yeah, I said, yeah, sure. I'll give it a try. I liked this girl. She was a lot of fun and she made a lot of money. And I thought that was something I wanted. So I went to this contest not knowing what I was walking into. And so I tried to make up for my lack with enthusiasm because of my theater background. I just knew, well, I'm just going to hype up the crowd, which is what I did. And I tried to make up for the loss of height by just jumping up and down so people wouldn't notice that I was short. And I did. I would just spring up and jump up and just yell and scream. And the crowd actually loved it. They loved it. And so I ended up winning this contest, which was insane to me because these girls had all the fancy getup and they were just, all really sexy. And here I was, this wild banshee just coming out and yelling and screaming for myself and jumping around stage. And so I thought it was really bizarre that I won. I was shocked. And I'm like, what is happening here? And the manager of the club actually tricked me. And he said, well, you get half your money right now, and then you get your other half on your first day of work. So it was like $500 for the prize. And he gave me $250. And I said, no, I earned that. I really won that contest. And he goes, oh yeah, I know. He goes, if you would have done bad, we would have given you $500 and let you leave. He's like, but we want you to work for us. And we know you're going to make great money at this club. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a free house fee for I think it was like a whole month or something like that. It was a long time. And he says, you don't know this, but you have to pay a fee. It was like $120 to work. And everybody has to pay not only that, but 20% of what they make, but you get to keep everything you make for a solid month or whatever. And so he said, that way you can give it a try and see if you like it. And I thought, wow, there's no harm, no foul. I get to keep everything. So I just, said, okay, I showed up at work and I literally did not take a bathroom break or rest. I worked the whole time because in my mind, I was not doing it for the lifestyle or to be a stripper or to hang out with this celebrity I had a game plan. So I was saving up my money to actually buy an apartment building because my grandfather, who was an immigrant, that's what he did. and he ended up doing okay. And I said, if he was an immigrant and he could do that, then I could do that. So I was going to try and walk in his footsteps and build something of a passive income and that I could have for the future. So that was my game plan.
Your mindset was very unique, at least to the ones that I know, because you became a stripper, and like you said, you had intentions to build a future off of that, which is not usually the case. But there's also something that was peculiar, which is the fact that you considered yourself a Christian. You'd grown up, you said, in a Baptist church, and you still considered yourself a Christian, even though you were now a stripper. So how did you reconcile these two things together?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I don't know. I heard the voice of God from when I was a child, and I knew the presence and the love of God. I was angry when I went to become a dancer. I actually had a conversation with him because my first night of dancing, I made so much money. I got my first night of good sleep, and I had a conversation with God. And I said, God, one day I'm going to serve you, but I can't afford it right now. You're not taking care of me. And now I have to go and figure this out for myself. But one day when I make enough money and I'm able to sustain myself, I will serve you. And I said, I'm kind of mad because you know my heart, but I will not use this job to hurt anyone. I will not steal from anyone. And of course, I'm lying to people because if I had a boyfriend, I couldn't tell people. But I said, if I felt like they were falling in love with me and getting too far, I would be like, nope, this is how it is. So I tried to work the job as honestly as I could and according to my conscience. And obviously, it was seared to some degree because why would I even be in there to begin with? But in my head, I figured I figured out a loophole where I could do this business and still serve God or still love God. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and that's going to continue in the next part of the story. So I want you to talk about how you got connected to Playboy, because now at this point you're 19, 20, around that age, like in the first few years of college, and you're a stripper, but eventually you got connected to Playboy. So can you explain how that worked?
Yes. So I actually had a client that would come in all the time. He was an amazing friend of mine during my whole time of dancing, which was 12 years. But anyway, his name was Pete, and he was very supportive of me as a person and said, you should be getting more work. You should be a Playboy model. And, I really think you should enter this contest. It's called Hawaiian Tropic. Look into it. And so I did. I looked into it and I entered into their local contest. And it takes about 4 or 5 local contests before you can qualify for to enter national. So I won that. I was so excited, and Playboy was there. And they were there on the local level. So Playboy from Chicago saw me win the local contest of Miss Chicago. And then when I went to the national Playboy saw me too. And they just really liked me. And they said, it's wonderful that you live in Chicago. We've got an office here. We would love to shoot with you. And they didn't know that I was a stripper. So I kept, my stripping was very separate from my modeling. So my agent didn't know that I stripped. Nobody knew. Even Playboy didn't know. It wasn't something I talked about. And I was considered one of their girl next doors. So a fresh college, kid. And if they were to know I was a stripper, that would have completely obliterated the way that they profiled me at Playboy. So I had to keep that on the down low. But anyway, I worked for them for about 3 years, and I kept trying to be a playmate, and I would do test shoots for that. And then I would get denied. There was somebody in the company that really didn't like me and would always try to sabotage every photo shoot that I went to. And there was a photographer that loved me, and he was always trying to promote me. So there was this little war going on within Playboy. And it was very frustrating for me to be there for 3 years. And I knew time was ticking away. So, after a certain point, you're not fresh anymore. So I knew I've got to make a move, and I've got to be aggressive if I really want this. So I ended up reading Hugh Hefner's books. He had published a couple books, and I read them, and I wrote a personal letter to him. And I actually put money in and produced a video. This is back in the day when VHS was happening. And I produced my own Why I Should Be a Playmate video and had somebody edit it and cut it. And then I sent him my own homemade PR package. And it had a letter and a custom cover to this video, and he loved it. And he actually called Playboy and said, "Who is this girl? I love her spirit. I think she's got what it takes. I want to see her." And they said, "Oh, she already applied and we denied her." She said, "I don't care. I own the company and I say who gets to be what. I want to see her." And so I got sent out for a Playmate test shoot with some pretty big Playmates. If I won't mention their names because I really don't want to incriminate myself in that group. But yeah, so I did a test shoot with them, and that's how that began.
Okay, I just want to make sure that everyone is caught up. So I'm not too familiar with how this works. So you mentioned Playmate. Can you explain what a Playmate is?
Okay, so Playboy has a lot of divisions in them. So they have the catalog girls who do like their clothing catalogs, and those are regular models usually. But they have their newsstand special girls and their calendar girls. And so I was a newsstand special girl. I just did photographs. I didn't get involved with any of the other stuff. And the newsstand specials were they would have what's voted like fan favorite. So if those girls did well, they could become playmates, but they usually didn't. So I was a fan favorite for a couple of years. I got voted. And so I was already on their radar to be considered for a Playmate. And so I think they were open to giving me a chance. And then after Hef definitely made sure, okay, we're going to have her. And so what a Playmate is the top of all of the Playboy models. There's only 12 Playmates in a year. And they decide, I think they have like 4 blondes and 2 brunettes, 1 Asian girl, 1 Spanish girl, 1 black girl. So they had a formula. And so I didn't fit into any type. I'm half Asian and I'm brunette, blonde highlights sometimes. So they were like, this kid, we can't put her anywhere. What do we do with her? So I think that had another factor to it, is that back in my day, there wasn't a lot of mixed race modeling either.
We talked about the contrast and the mix between trying to serve God and being a stripper, but as a Playboy model, how did you consider your work? Did you think that it was a necessary evil, or did you think that this was noble work?
I felt like people misunderstood. So this is how deceived I was. I read his book and I understood where Hef was coming from. I think that's why we connected so well, is I actually read his book. A lot of people say, I read your book, but I would quote things like, I read this and I resonated with what you said here. He grew up in the Midwest. He grew up in Chicagoland area. He grew up with a very strict upbringing as well. And I I resonated with all those things. I wanted the beauty and the glamour and the opportunity to see the world and experience new things. And so I just loved the beautiful women that I saw in the magazine. I wasn't looking at them from a guy's point of view. I'm looking at them from a woman's point of view, completely not sexual, completely like, I want to be like that. Look at this girl. I want to grow up and be just like that. So when I saw my first Playboy issue, I felt like she looked like Barbie, but brought to life. And to me, Barbie was my favorite doll. And so I just felt like this is just Barbie minus some of her clothes. And he's celebrating women in that way. And I want to be celebrated in that way. I want to be appreciated in that way. And I want to feel strong and powerful. I felt so weak and pushed down in my life. I wanted to own my power as a woman. And I felt like he was in agreement with that, with his magazine.
Okay, so let's get into the story of when you auditioned to become a Playmate, when you went for that test photo shoot. That is quite an intense story. So, can you tell us what happened from even the time that you were in the plane and that whole story all the way through?
So when I first was heading out, when Playboy asked me to shoot for their Playmate issue, it's pretty intense. So I had to get in extremely good shape. And that meant working out 2 hours a day, or 2 times a day, sorry, working out 2 times a day, really watching my diet. And because I was keeping my calories so low, I was actually having trouble going to sleep at night, because that's what happens when I starve myself. I just can't sleep. And so I was going through that. process. And during that time, I had found out that my boyfriend actually slept with my best friend. And so I found that out maybe 2 days before I left on this big photo shoot. And, I didn't really want this guy, but the fact that she did it this way really broke my heart. So I began to question whether I could trust my own instincts anymore. I obviously can't choose a guy, and I obviously can't choose a friend. And I obviously don't know if I can trust myself or anyone that I run into. So at this point, my whole world is just becoming very foggy and confusing, and I don't trust anything and I don't know what to do. But I'm trying to focus on my job. So I'm like, I just need to get through this photo shoot and then my life will get better, because once I become a playmate, I'll be able to afford to do what I'm called to do, whatever that is. I'll be able to afford it. So I get out on this plane, and I remember when we flew into Louisiana, I remember when I got off the plane, I could feel boom, boom, boom. I could feel things hitting me spiritually hitting me. And I felt powerful forces like, whoa, what is that? And I could feel it when I was walking down the streets, the darkness. And so, but I was also very excited about this new opportunity. And we got invited to this beautiful hotel in the French Quarter and into this 5-star restaurant. So I am excited about this new opportunity to turn my life around and actually become the Hollywood movie that I dreamed of. I said, okay, everyone starts off rough, right? But so did Marilyn Monroe. And this is going to be the turnaround for me. And so I sat down at this beautiful table and I got offered some wine. And I never really drank alcohol up until this point. And I just was looking around and everyone was celebrating. And I said no to the wine like I always do. And I just saw the look of like, oh, there she goes again, being responsible, being the boring, responsible person. And I just felt like, gosh, I've been working so hard trying to do everything the right way and nothing ever works out for me. What has being the good girl ever gotten me up until this point? And I just said, what the heck? Yeah, I'll have some wine. And everyone at the table was like, oh, really? Because they knew me for 3 years and we got out to dinner several times and I never said yes to wine. So here I was being rewarded. Everyone's like applauding me. Woo, she's the life of the party now. So I have, my first glass of wine and it is really hitting me hard. I've never drank before and whatever it was very good stuff. So I'm going to the bathroom and I look in the mirror and I go, wow, I look different. There was a spirit inside me. I could see it. And I kept looking in the mirror going, why do you look so different? Who is that? But anyway, I said, whoever that is, I like you. I like you. So walk out of the bathroom and we're kind of wrapping up this dinner and we have all these events to go to. So there's all these promotions that we were booked at different like bars and nightclubs doing signings and stuff like that. And so we were headed off to our first assignment. And as we were walking out the door, there was a guy that was hanging out by the door and he was smoking a joint. It looked like a joint. I don't know if it actually was one. And he said, hey, you want some of this? And I was drunk and I'm a germ freak. So I literally, I'm very weird about sharing makeup and stuff. So I'm like, in my head, I don't know why I said this, but I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. That was like the last thing I would have actually done. And I took whatever he had and I smoked it. And then I'm kind of stumbling and my group is catching me and they're like, hey, you're lagging behind. Like, they're looking at me weird. Like, why are you talking to this guy? He kind of looked like a bum on the street. And I was like, okay, well, see you later. Bye. And as we're walking down the street, I can't move my legs. And so then they have someone pick me up and carry me to the bar. And I was out. Literally the whole night, they had to carry me from bar to bar. I don't even remember. I just remember pieces of me being laid out on the couch and someone carrying me to the next event. And, I don't even remember how, but they got me into my hotel room and, got me in bed. And, nothing happened. They just dropped me off like a sack of potatoes. And I wake up the next morning and I head off to this photo shoot. And I had never done anything so unprofessional in my life. Like, you have to remember, as a stripper, I was professional, and you can get away with a lot as a dancer. And here I am at my final destination where I'm supposed to prove that I belong there. And I just dropped the ball at that moment. That is not like my character at all. So, anyway, I get out to the photo shoot, and it was really honestly surreal to me because if anyone who really knows me knows how much I love architecture and I love vintage furniture. And my vignette was in this old hotel that was going to be torn down. And before they tore it down, they left some pieces of it that we could shoot. So it was kind of like half destroyed. It was kind of cool. And then they brought in this beautiful old fashioned vanity, this, like, where you would see Marilyn Monroe putting on her makeup, and it was just so elegant and pretty. And it was like a dream to me. And I was like, wow, this is everything I like. If you could have designed a dream vignette for me, this is it. So I loved it. And I was like so happy. I'm sitting there, but I'm out of it. And they're trying to put my makeup on. It's getting so hard because I'm flopping around and can't, sit up. And they finally just lay me down and say, just go to sleep. We'll put your makeup on and then we'll wake you up when it's time to shoot. So they wake me up, and I don't know what happened, but something happened where they all look at each other and they're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And they all gather and start whispering. And I'm going, what's going on? What's going on? And then they push me in a car and they cart me off. And I'm driving down the street with them and I'm going, wait a second, we're supposed to be shooting. Like, what's happening? Where are you guys taking me? And they ended up taking me to a mental institution. So I wish I could say I knew what I did. I have no idea what I did.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to tell you about our extra content on Locals. It's where you can hear the beginning of our conversations, learn the practical applications of the testimonies, and get hours worth of other bonus content. All of that, plus the regular episodes without any ads. It's free to join, so why don't you come check it out by going to almostfalse.locals.com or by downloading the Locals app. The links are in the description. Now let's get back to the story. So you went to a photo shoot, and before it even started, you passed out. You obviously did something that freaked out everyone. They took you into a car, dropped you at a mental hospital, and then what?
Well, unfortunately, they tricked me into thinking that if I signed paperwork, they would tell me what was happening. So I just agreed. I said, oh, okay. Then, I signed the paperwork, and then I turn around and they're all gone. And then the nurse just looks at me and says, you're going to be here for a while. So get comfortable. Here's some clothes. And it was like a gown and some socks, I think. And then she had a cup of pills. And I'm like, what's this? She goes, you're going to have to take this. And she had to monitor me taking it. And from that point on, I'm completely out of it because whatever they gave me was super heavy medication. And I just remember feeling so like a piece of garbage. Everyone in my life was like, oh, you're not useful to us. Okay, you're garbage. You're out. You know, um, and these are friends that I had worked with for 3 years. So that wasn't Playboy always would call us. They would say, "Your family, your family." I would go. I went to the mansion a few times. I've hung out, with Heth and the other models. Like, your family, you're part of this family. They would say that all the time, and I felt like, how could they say this and leave me like here? Like, it's just as soon as there was an issue or problem, not check in and not make sure I was okay and just drop me off like a sack of potatoes. And that was like everybody in my life, like my boyfriend. Oh, if I'm not making money, then, you're out. And my best friend, it's like, oh, I don't care about you. I want the benefits of being friends with you. I don't care about you as a person. I'm out. My parents, you're too much. You're asking too much. You want too much. You dream too hard. Forget about it. We're out. And so I just was like, gosh, like, am I always going to be alone? I work so hard. What does it take to be loved?
It's very strange and interesting what happened with you. And you don't really know what happened, but there seemed to be something that really, really scared people. And I think in order to get context as to what this is, we have to go back in your past to when you were 19, because you had an event with your brother that involved the Ouija board. And that seems to be a clue as to what happened at Playboy. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. So when I was 19 years old, my brother and I played with the Ouija board. And this was right when I got away to college and I was experimenting with, like, you know, let's try everything my parents didn't want me to do. Not everything, but um, the Ouija board was presented to me by a girl in my dorm. And every time I would play on it with her, it would be very strong and it seemed to like me. So she would ask me all the time, hey, can you come? Because when you come, this thing works really good. And so I started to do it. And ironically, I felt like, oh, I'm finally good at something, when you feel like everything you work at is so hard. And this was really easy. And I felt like, wow, this is amazing. And so I wanted to show my brother this gift that I had. And so I invited him over for pizza one night and I wanted him to see my apartment. I had gotten an apartment off campus. And so I was showing him that. And then I said, hey, my friend showed me about this game. I want you to try it with me. And so he thought it was a joke. And he's like, I don't believe in that stuff. It's all made up. And I said, wait till you see. Wait till you see. So I get on it with him and the thing is moving stronger than ever. It literally feels like, it doesn't feel like a slight magnet is moving underneath it. It feels like hands are grabbing it and it's jerking and it's stopping. And it's stopping to the point where it's like shaking at the end. It's like very alive when he gets on it. So he's like, whoa, I have like superpowers too. I said, wow, this is insane. Like it was strong when I would do it. Then when we would do it together, it was even more strong. So instantly he gets drawn into it because he had no context for what this was. He didn't believe in it. And then it just started working. We didn't even have to, like, we hover your hands above it. You don't touch it. We would hover it high and it would still just go off. So it was pretty crazy. And so he got enthralled with it and just kept asking questions all during the night. And this is when I first started dancing and I had to go to work that weekend. But I let him play on it. And I didn't know there's a rule that when you play on a Ouija board, you never play on it alone. And so I got tired and I said, I'm peace out. I'm going to bed. And he just continued to play. And then when he decided he wanted to go to bed, he said he lay down and he saw this swirl of smoke above his head. And it was just like a swirl that had faces that were morphing in and out. And they were coming down towards him and they were going back up. And their faces were changing. They would laugh and then they would get really close to his face and then they would suck back into this swirl. And they were all different kinds of faces. He said some of them were fat, some of them were skinny. They all were scary and they were all laughing. And then they would look at each other. So the faces would look at each other and laugh at him in front of him. And then they would look at him and then laugh. And then they said it started to get, he said it started to get lower and kind of go like a tunnel, almost like what you would see like a tornado. And it went right to his head. And he said he felt a suction go into his head. And then he said, ever since that point, I haven't felt like myself. He goes, I'm hearing voices. I'm feeling these impulses to do things that are really outside of myself. He goes, I know it's not me, but I just want to do stuff and bad stuff, like bad thoughts are coming to my head. And so I was like, oh, this doesn't sound good, but you didn't sleep all night. So let's just think about this logically. If you get sleep, you'll be fine. That's what I told him. So he kind of looked at me in a way that really scared me. He started to, it was almost like a trance. It looked like he was in a trance and he started to look at me like he wanted to kill me. And I said, Daniel, snap out of it. What's going on? What are you thinking? Hello, it's Julia, it's your sister. And he's like, oh my gosh, we got to get out of here. And he goes, the voices were telling me it'd be so easy to kill. I could just snap your neck. I could just snap your neck. And I go, what? You need sleep. So anyway, I got scared. I closed up my apartment. And every time I closed up my apartment, I'm very OCD. I like things to be clean and neat. And so I put everything in its place and I wrap everything up and I leave because I'm closing it up for the weekend because I'm going to be sleeping over at my friend's house. As I dance, on Friday, Saturday night, I would sleep over. And yeah, so I closed up the apartment and we left. And everything was fine at work. I totally forgot about it until I came back like Sunday morning early. And I come back to my apartment and I come into the house and I could feel the energy was off. There was something there that I could feel was very intense. And it felt like hatred coming from the walls, like eyes were staring at me. And I felt very uncomfortable in this place that was my home. And it was weird. And I didn't feel alone. And this place was very small. You could see the kitchen from the living room and even, the kitchen from the bedroom. So it was a 1-bedroom apartment. And all the kitchen cabinets were open. So all the doors were open, which was very crazy for me because I'm very OCD and I know I didn't leave it that way. And then I go into the bathroom. I'm hearing this noise in the bathroom and my electric toothbrush is bouncing around inside the sink. And the crazy part was my toothbrush was broken. I actually had to get a new one. So it wasn't working. And so here it was turned on with it unplugged and not working. And all of a sudden now it's working on its own, bouncing around. I'm going, oh, that's weird. What's going on? And then I go into my bedroom and on my bed is a picture of, it's like a photo album of me and my brother when we were little. It's laid out, opened up, as if someone has been drinking coffee and looking at this photo album. But the crazy part was this photo album was in the back of my closet that was broken. So I had those big, heavy doors that were sliders, but the slider was broken. So you had to lift the door up and move it. And so I had this photo album, which was a baby album. I didn't need it. So it didn't need to be in the front. It was in the back of my closet. It's all the way in the back of my closet. Somebody had gone up there, pulled it out, and laid it out on the bed. And it looked like there was an impression of a body, like somebody had just left the room to answer the phone or something. And I walked in on this scene where it looked like someone was looking at this picture of me and my brother when we were little. And so I got really creeped out because that picture, we would always say, look, it's the angel picture because there was a flash that was over me and my brother. And I said, look, we have an angel looking over us. And so I thought, wow, that's very weird that picture was the one. So I call my brother and I'm thinking, just going to call him to make sure. Did you come back here? I know I didn't give you the key, but somehow did you get back into the apartment? Because stuff is not looking like it normally does. And he goes, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you called me. Of course I didn't come to your apartment. I don't even have a key. How could I get in? He goes, I've been up since I saw you last. I haven't got a wink of sleep. And I'm going, oh my gosh, he sounded frantic and crazy. And he goes, you've got to come here. It's getting worse. The powers are getting worse. Now they're typing messages through my hands. I'm sitting down at the computer. I'm not thinking anything. And I'm getting all these downloads. I'm hearing all these voices. You got to come. You got to help me. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. So I clean up my apartment. I get out of there and I go see my brother. And he is in a horrible state. I didn't think a person could age within a weekend, but he looked like he had aged like 10 years. And he didn't even look like the same person. He hadn't slept, hadn't taken a shower. He was just disheveled and frantic. And long story short, we found out because we played with the Ouija board, we had opened up a portal and he got demonically possessed during that time. And we took him to a pastor to help out, but our pastor was Southern Baptist and they don't believe in demonic possession or deliverance or anything like that. They don't believe in spiritual warfare, which is insane to me. So this pastor didn't know what to do. And so he just called out to God and he said, God, what do I do? And the pastor said to him, Daniel, look at me. He's like, I don't know what to do, but I just felt like the Lord said, look at me. And so Daniel tries to look at him and he's like, and he can't focus his eyes. And his eyes is going up to the ceiling. Then it's like his head's jerking around, violently jerking around. And I'm thinking, he's going to kill the guy. He's going to kill my brother. I see my brother's neck just stretch out really long. And I see these things like punching out through his neck. So I see action in his neck. And I'm going, what is happening here? And he's like choking. So something's like pulling down his tongue or something. He's choking. He's like, I can't talk. And I go, you're going to kill him. He's like turning colors. And so he pushes me out of the room, says, get out of here. And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in the hallway. I'm like, God, if you're real, like, I don't know how to help my brother. All I just know is that you got to help him. You got to help him. You got to help him. And I just kept saying that over and over again. And I hear this loud scream come out. And then maybe like 3 minutes later, they open up the door. And my brother looks a lot better, a lot better. His eyes are clear and he seems like he's a little bit more alert. And he's just relieved to get out. So he's like, I'm so glad that's over. And I can't believe that happened. And he's just honestly traumatized by it all. And we're driving home and we're in the car together and we're looking around and the greens were just looking really green. And the sky was looking so blue. It almost looked like we were in The Wizard of Oz when everything had turned Technicolor. And it looked so vibrant and so beautiful in contrast to the darkness and the depression and the not getting sleep and the worry and the fear. It literally looked like there was a filter of darkness on our life that got lifted off. And now all of a sudden we're seeing Technicolor. So I was just looking around. I go, Daniel, life is so beautiful. Why have we never noticed this before? And he goes, you're right, it is. He goes, actually, this isn't life. This is not real life. He said, they're tricking us. And I said, no. You're tired. He goes, no, there's still more in me. I could feel it. This is a trick. And so he's like, let's go back. And I go, you want to go back there? He goes, I have to go back there. Let's go back. So we turned around, we go back, and there was even more in him. And so I don't know what the pastor did the second time, but he wouldn't let me in the room. And then Daniel came out and he looked even better. And so he said, I don't want to talk about it. He wouldn't talk about it. In fact, to this day, he still doesn't talk about it. So I don't know what happened, but he had gotten a further deliverance. And after that happened, he ended up going to a church that believed in deliverance, and he had a minister walk him through the process of deliverance. And he got an intimate relationship with the Lord, and he began to align his life with the Lord, totally separate from me. I was doing my own thing. So I just thought this was a him problem, not a me problem. And so now these demonic spirits that entered my brother had also entered me. But their plan was to remain dormant because they would have more power in me if they lie dormant and continue to fool me. So I was living under deception, thinking in my head I could get away with dancing as long as I didn't do anything bad, right? What's bad? Bad is according to God's law, not according to Julia's law. So I was still sinning, right? So I opened up a portal of sexual sin. So over the course of 12 years, dancing for 200-300 guys a night, can you just imagine how infestation can happen? Also, too, with Playboy, these are international magazines going all around the world. It's pornography. That is sin. That is something against the covenant of marriage. It's not what God has for you. So now I've opened up a portal in that. So I've opened up so many portals. Who knows the source of why it all happened? But we know it all happened from sin, and it all happened from me being in rebellion against God. So what happened with Playboy is when I went to this big photo shoot, they sent me all these clothes, this PR stuff. T-shirts to throw up to the crowd, T-shirts to wear for me, and jackets and all the stuff with their logo on it. And so what I did is I brought my T-shirts and I customized them, made them a little sexier, and I had custom words put on the back that said, God loves Playboy. I literally put that on my shirts, and I was going to wear that for part of my photo shoot when we did our vignette for passing out the beads and stuff. And so I know that God didn't want that to happen, right? And Playboy was fine with it. They're fine, they were fine with whatever. I told myself that I was going to be the first Christian playmate. That was going to be my thing, that you can love God and still be a Playboy model. How blasphemous is that? But that's how deceived I was in thinking that I could do it my way. That wasn't God's plan. So he sabotaged that plan right before that happened. I was supposed to wear those beads, and that never ended, that t-shirt, and that never ended up happening. So
So these demons did not manifest, but they influenced you in certain decisions, like that, which is like one of the one of the most blasphemous things you could have done at that time in your life. But you thought that this was a righteous thing, so they influenced you in that way. But they only started manifesting at that photo shoot, and who knows what that looked like. And I wish we could have a picture from somebody that was a witness to what that actually looked like. But I guess we're probably never going to know unless you able to get a hold of someone, if you want, if you even want to do that.
I actually tried to get a hold of the photographer. He's very private, and I reached out to him on Facebook, and I just said, "Hey, this is Jules. I'm okay, but I wanted to know if you remember this time." And I never heard back from him. But I hope to one day connect with him and hear what the other side was like.
Yeah. But now let's go back to what happened after that photo shoot, because you were dropped off at the mental hospital. And can you explain uh, how long you stayed there and what happened after you came back home?
I really don't know how long I stayed there. I think it was like 2.5 weeks, but it wasn't very clear to me because they had me on lithium. I can't remember. There was another one, Resperdal. I mean, very heavy drugs that make you totally out of it. So I'm not quite sure, but I do remember my mom came eventually to pick me up. And that was the first idea that I got of who I was. Because all the way up until that, my brain felt like mush. And I just felt like every day was the same. And um, yeah, so I just didn't know who I was, where all my friends went. It was just this big fog of confusion. And then when I saw my mom, I started to get a context of like, oh, that's my mom. I'm Julia. What am I doing here? So things started to get a little bit clearer because I had an idea now. So when I saw my mom, she just wept. She just looked at me and wept, and she said, "What happened to my girl? What happened to my girl? What happened to you?" And so she just was crying, and I just remember hugging her and just feeling like a little girl again, like somebody cares. She's crying. Somebody cares about me. Somebody loves me. And I just remember smelling her hair and feeling like a little girl. And I was just like, Mommy, I'm lost. Just feeling like, what happened? I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. So she was crying and I was crying. And she said, well, we'll just figure it out together. But I got to get you home. And so we went on the plane together, and it was very quiet. And yeah, so I went back home, and she dropped me off at my apartment, and I ended up taking some of my savings that I was working so hard to save for this apartment building. And I just paid for my rent a year in advance because I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't want to go back to work because everybody was waiting for my issue to come out. Everyone wanted to know what happened. All my customers, management was all excited because now they had a playmate or a play, you know what I mean, working at their club. And what was I going to say? You know, I was just completely demoralized and embarrassed. And I didn't even have an explanation. I didn't know myself what had happened. So I just went and sold all my furniture, pretty much only had a bed. I sold all my jewelry. And I didn't want to kill myself, but I didn't want to live anymore. I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't eat. I was down to 75 pounds, and I was losing half my hair. I was a real wreck. And it got so bad where I wasn't answering my phone, and my friends from the club I had a couple of other good girlfriends. One of them reached out and said, you're not answering your phone. So she came to my house and just, kept knocking on the door until I answered. And she said, "Oh my gosh, you don't even look like you anymore." She goes, "Julia." She just started weeping and she's like, "Oh my gosh." And so she just said, "Let me in your house." And she saw I had like no food and I was sleeping on my mattress. She just slept on the mattress with me all night and just held me and cried with me. She told me, "I don't want you to give up on, like, you're giving up. You're a fighter. Why are you giving up?" And I said, "I have nothing to live for. I work so hard. Everything's a mess. What am I going to do? How am I going to explain myself?" She says, "I don't know, but you have a lot to live for. You're young. You can piece yourself together again." And she left and she came back later on that night with a Tiffany's bracelet. It was her favorite thing that she had. She wore hers all the time and she bought me one. She said, I want you to know you're so valuable. I went out to get this for you and want you to know that I think you're valuable." And she just loved on me. And that gave me hope that maybe I could end up showing back at the strip club or trying to work my way out of the hole that I was in. So yeah, my life was pretty bad. And she went back to T and said, "You did this to her. And she might not live because of you. And you're going to be responsible for that." And so T came over and she said, she just begged me and cried, "Will you forgive me?" And of course I'd forgive you. I wasn't in love with that guy at all. Um, it was the friendship part, the betrayal part that just really hurt. And I loved her daughter and she just said, "My daughter misses you." And of course, my heart's just like, so she said, "Come with me. I'll take care of you. I will heal you. You got a family. We're not going to leave you like this." And so there was that thing again, that family. That's such a trigger word for me because it's been very hard to feel like you have to do life by yourself. And so I wanted family. And so I said, "Yeah, I don't want to live and I'll go back to your house." And so I slept on her floor for, I don't know, a few months, like maybe 3 months. And then I ended up just getting healthy because my goddaughter was there. I was praying with her, reading the Bible. That was making me feel better. And I was eating food because I wasn't going to starve myself in front of her. I wanted to be a good example. And the light was coming in from the windows because they didn't want to shut it out. I was sleeping without, with the curtains drawn all day long. So I was starting to get back to being healthy again, gaining weight.
So I just want to make sure that we get this right. So T is this friend that used to be your best friend that cheated on you with your boyfriend, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And she said something that is interesting because she said she would take care of it and she would heal you. And she tried. So can you explain how Santeria was mixed in with your whole situation, which was already bad? It was getting better, but then that got all mixed into it. So can you explain that whole ordeal?
What ended up happening is she invited me into her home, and I did not know the extent of what a witch that she was. When I lived with her, I realized the extent and the depths of her being involved with Santeria. So she lived in an apartment that had 3 levels: a top level, which is her level, and her mother in law lived in the bottom level. And then there was a basement. And in the basement, they were so hardcore Santeria people that she actually picked through the basement foundation and took the concrete out and just made it a dirt floor. And in Santeria, being in a dirt floor is really important. And so her mother in law taught her how to do rituals so she could be the top earner at the club. And she was. But her mother in law also had her do all these rituals to make more money, to get this or whatever. And when I got to her house and after I started to get healthy, she comes up to me and says, "I want to give you a present." And I said, "Okay, well, you've done a lot for me. And, I'm so grateful. I'm going to go back to work and make money. I'm going to pay you for the rent and stuff. I don't want you buying me food. I'm getting better." And she's like, well, I want to still give you a gift. And so, um, gifts are kind of hard because it's one of my love languages. So it's very interesting that she worded it as a gift. And I didn't want to be rude and deny a gift, but she said, I created this circumstance, so I want to help undo this circumstance. So I'm going to give you the spiritual cleansing ritual. And I paid for this thing. It's an all-day thing. And I really want you to go and see my mother-in-law. So I was like, oh, okay. I had no idea that this basement was the way that it was, but she's like, okay, you need to take a bath and then put on these clothes and then go down the stairs to the basement. And I go down the stairs to the basement and it's got this dark feeling. And I'm like, I don't know about this, but I don't want to be rude. I'm not going to back out now. And this is a dirt floor, and she's having me sit in the middle of a dirt floor. She covers my eyes, she covers my head. And then I hear the sound of a chicken squawking, and then I hear crunching, and then I feel this like warm, like substance kind of oozing down my neck and my hair. And come to find out, it's blood. It's chicken blood all over me. I'm like knee deep in a ritual. I didn't know this is, I'm just thinking it's a gift of a spiritual cleansing. I had no idea what this was. And so this is happening. And she leaves me in the basement because she's talking to these gods. She's talking to these Santeria spirits, consulting with them, asking them, I don't know what she's asking them, but she tells me later on, all right, you are fully accepted into this realm. If you want to take it, you can be very high up in Santeria. Um, they are they are very receptive to you being part of this religion. And so I want to gift you these beads, and we did a bunch of ceremonies. I don't know what she said over me, but she said, I want to invite you to come in further because I want to train you up in this. And I'm like, okay. Uh, I didn't want to be rude. So I took the beads and I said, I got to think about this. And she goes, yeah, think about it. And she goes, I'm going to give you a few days to think about it. And I go, okay. So I go in the bathroom and I'm cleaning up this blood and I'm looking in the mirror. Again, I'm like, who are you? What is happening? This is not even you. I didn't even look like myself. And I'm just crying now because my spirit is so grieved. I have blood on me. My life is just so bad. I'm living on the floor of my friend's apartment and I'm just like beyond myself right at this point. And then something rises up in me and I just say, no, I can't hold these things. I can't even have them on my hand anymore. So I call her and I say, I'm so sorry. I really appreciate you trying to help me. I said, I don't need 3 days to think about this. I know that this is not for me. I can't take these. I don't want them. I don't want anything to do with this. And I appreciate all your kindness and your generosity, but I have to say a firm no on this one. And so she says, okay, are you sure? Think about it. I said, no, I'm positive. Please don't ask me again. I cannot do this. I have no peace about it. And so she leaves. And then T's boyfriend comes around and he was a high priest in this thing. And he says, I knew it. He said, there's something about you. There's a light about you. He goes, there's a power around you. And I knew you couldn't do it. He says, good for you. Keep following that path. And I'm looking at him thinking, why are you saying good for me? Why are you in this? If you know that this is not good. So I said, okay. He goes, you're going to do something great in your life. I always knew you would. And he goes, you're going to keep doing something good in your life. I said, okay, thanks, Leo. So he leaves. And yeah, that was the end of that. And soon after that circumstance, I started dating because I started getting healthy again. I went back to work. This is my first time of ever being on the dating scene. And during that course, I met John, my husband. So I get set up on a date and we end up going out and on our first date. And I come back and I'm really excited because we just hit it off. And it was just, it was just the flow of the Holy Spirit. I just felt so good when I was in his presence. I just knew this was the one that I've been praying for. And he had just did a cover of a magazine called, I forgot what the name of the magazine, but he was on the cover of this magazine. Oh, Muscle and Fitness. And so he had a stack of them in the back of his car. And I said, oh, can I grab one of those? I want to show my friend Leo, your picture. He goes, yeah, sure. So I come home from my date. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the guy that I'm dating. He's so great. He's so nice. And Leo looks at me, he goes, oh, and I'm like, why are you making that face? He goes, oh, he's a handsome guy, good for you. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So I had the magazine on the coffee table and T comes in the room. And she goes, what's all the commotion? I go, yeah, look at the guy that I'm seeing. I'm so excited. He's so nice. And she looks at me. She goes, just this look of pure rage. She couldn't even control her face. She was so angry. And then Leo looks at me and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's why he looked at me that way. Like he knew that that was going to happen. And I'm like, oh man. He goes, you better watch yourself. And I'm thinking, what? So anyway, over the course of me and dating John, she stopped talking to me, which we live in this little apartment and it's hard when you're passing in the hallway. She's not talking to me now. She's locking me out of the house. She's hiding my items of clothes. And so I'm getting scared because I know what she's capable of. Because now at this point, I'm going, I wonder if she did all these curses on me, for all this stuff to happen to me. So I know what she's involved with. And so I say to John, you got to help me find an apartment because I got to get out of this place because this is not going to end well. So that's what ended up happening with her.
Okay, so now you found an apartment with your now husband, who at the time you were just dating, and shortly after you ended up being married, and you lived together for 6 years, and that was seemed to be a fairly decent part of your life. Now we talked about a bunch of chaotic things, but that was fairly stable. But that took a sudden stop when one of your mutual friends just tragically died, and all hell broke loose even more so than it ever did in your life, which is crazy to think of when we hear about your whole story, but it did. So can you tell us what happened on that day that you learned the news that your friend had passed?
Yeah. So I had been working for a while still. And so it was great because John was like a partner in this. And the amazing part of how God works, and I wish I could share the story of how we met and all that God did with that, was that God allowed him to have the same history as me. So he was a stripper in college. So when I eventually shared with him that I danced, he didn't judge me or put me in a category. And all of his friends, when they found out that I was a stripper, they said, you shouldn't marry her. She's a waste. She's trash. And he's like, no, I see her. I know who she is. And we got married. And I just love that God allowed him to have that history so he didn't put me in a category. And he had the same dreams of real estate that I did. Actually, John had his real estate license. So when I shared that I wanted to do investment properties, he said, that's my dream too. I'd love to do that. And that was our plan. We were going to get an apartment building and do this thing together. So by the time that our friend had passed away, I was doing well financially, but I was also getting this weird anxiety every time I would go to work, this weird conviction about, it was like cursing our marriage somehow because I had to lie to people to tell them, oh no, I'm not married. Oh, not, girls would gossip at the club and say, oh, why would you want to dance from her? She's married. So I'd have to lie and be like, no, I'm not married. Da, da, da. And I just felt like something about it just felt really off after I got married. And it was getting worse and worse by the year. And so John's friend had passed away and I was alone in our condo downtown. And we were living in this big high rise where you could see it was just floor to ceiling windows all the way around. And I just felt so lonely and so grieved in my spirit. And what came up for me was this feeling of, are you ready to die? That's what came up for me. And I just kept wrestling with the thought, am I ready to die? And I knew in my spirit I was not ready to die because I felt like I knew that the job was taking me down a very bad road. So I wrestled with that feeling all night. And then finally, I got this deep impression of read your Bible. And I'm like, read my Bible? I'm kind of arguing with this. Like, I haven't looked at a Bible in years, but my mom had gifted me a Bible and it was in its box. And instantly in my mind, I knew exactly where it was. It was like I got a picture of where it was. And I'm like, okay. So I go to that place and the Bible's actually there. So I dust it off and I'm like cracking it open. You know, when you open up a new Bible, it's hard to like flip the pages because the gold makes it stick together. So I'm flipping the pages and I said, God, if you have anything to say, just say it to me now. And I open up the Bible and I do this. They say not to do that, but I do believe sometimes God will speak to you that way. And I landed on a verse. My finger landed on the verse that says, if your eye offends you, cut it out. It's better to go into heaven with one eye than to hell with two eyes. And I said, oh gosh, I knew that convicted me because I felt like it was my job that was offending God. I knew I wasn't trusting him. And so I said, that makes me uncomfortable. God, let me give you another try. So I'm going to do it all over again. So I do it all over again and I flip and I'm in a whole different chapter and my finger lands on, if your hand offends you, cut it off. It's better to go into heaven with one hand than to hell with two hands. And at that point, I was like, whoa, God is speaking to me and I can't ignore it at this point. So I'm starting to get really anxious and feel like this is God and I don't know what to do with that. So I start to get this anxiety and this thought comes in my head, call your mom. And it's about 3 o'clock in the morning at this time. So I'm like, I'm not going to call my mom right now. Like, I'm not going to wake her up. And I just get this really strong impression. She would be so happy to hear you're reading the Bible. It doesn't matter. Call your mom. Call your mom. So I'm like, okay, mom. I call her. She's like, what? And I go, I know this is kind of out of the blue, but I'm reading my Bible. And remember, you told me that if I ever get lost, to open up the Bible and God would lead me out and speak to me. And she goes, yeah. I go, I think he's speaking to me. And she goes, really? And I go, yeah. And then all of a sudden, I'm in my bed and my hands go to the top of the bed and my feet go to the bottom of the bed. And it feels like something has got me strapped to the bed, even though I can't see it. I can't move. I'm restrained. And so all of a sudden this voice comes out of me and I say, I hate you, bitch. And it's like a guttural, mean, horrible voice. It sounds like a demon. And my mom goes, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I go, Mom, well, I can't move my body. I can't move. And then all these voices start coming out of me, like a little kid's voice, like, mommy, help me, save me, save me. And then another voice comes out and then a roar comes out. And I sound like I'm like seething like a wild beast. That's the only way I can describe it. It's like, and I'm just spitting and snot's coming out and I can't control myself. It's like, I am like a wild beast. And I live in this condo downtown with paper thin walls. Okay. We live downtown Chicago and these paper thin walls are there. And I am literally shouting and screaming and groaning and moaning like an animal at the top of my lungs. And I'm thinking, I don't know how anyone, like the police are going to come thinking someone's getting murdered in here. And my mom says, stay where you're at. Obviously, I couldn't move. Stay where you're at. I'm going to get help. I'm going to get help. I know what's happening, Julia. I know what's happening. And so she leaves me on the phone with my little sister. So I have a little sister and she's special needs. And the poor girl, I don't know, she may be like 10 or 12 at the time. She's like, hi. And I'm like, oh, Christy, can you pray for me? She's like, yeah. And she's just praying the most simple prayer. God, help my sister. And instantly there's peace. It was like the anointing of God on that prayer of a child just praying for you. The purity of that prayer is going to make me cry. And I was like, oh, Christy, please don't stop praying for me. Pray for me. Pray for me. She's like, okay, God, help, help. That's all she kept saying. And I just felt the presence of God fill the room when she would talk. And So it was like, you're so powerful, Christy. Thank you for being here for me. I love you so much. And she just stayed on the phone while my mom was getting help. And finally, my mom comes like 2.5 hours later. I just feel so bad for my little sister. And I get loosed from the bed at this point. At like maybe about 10 minutes before my mom comes, I get loose. And I say, oh, Christy, I'm loose. I got to go to the bathroom. I really got to go. And so she's like, okay. We hang up. I go to the bathroom. I'm looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, oh my God, who are you? It's just my eyes are jaundiced. Like the whites of my eyes are literally yellow. And my skin has this scaly, dry, almost like a serpent-like appearance to it, the scaly appearance. And I just don't look like myself. I do look like a wild animal. Snots all over my shirt and drool, and just my eyes are beet red and yellow at the same time. So I'm like, wow, I look sick. And eventually, like, I'm kind of figuring out myself in the mirror, and then the doorbell rings. And so the doorbell rings, and this pastor comes in, this childhood pastor from long time ago when my brother was being delivered from demons. It was that pastor. And so he takes one look at me and he goes, oh my gosh, she is a mess. I can't do anything with her. I can't help her out. You need to lock her up in an institution. And I hadn't even said anything at this point. I'm thinking, I can barely. So what's happening to me is I am like not acting normal, right? Okay. So I'm like trying to control my body because I'm trying to sit still. So I'm like going like this, and, I'm like breathing kind of funny, but I am in way more control than I was just 10 minutes before when I was on the bed, writhing and seething like an animal. So in my mind, I'm thinking I'm acting normal because I'm just like containing myself like this. But he's seeing something, and I wish I could ask what he saw. But my mom saw me and she goes, I know exactly what's happening. You were there when her brother was possessed. The same thing is happening to her. Help my daughter. He says, I can't, I won't, I don't know what to do. She's too far gone. You're on your own. And so he leaves. And my mom looks at me and she says, I'm so sorry, Jules. I know what's happening. I don't know how to help, but I won't leave you. But you can't be alone. And I said, you're right. And so she goes, you're going to have to come with me. And I said, okay. So we just packed up some clothes, and I spent time with my mom until John came home and saw what was happening to me.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask. What did your husband think of all this? Because your mom was Christian, your husband was an atheist. What did he think of all that?
So when John saw me, he was shocked. He couldn't believe that within one weekend, just like my brother, within one weekend, I probably aged like 10 or 12 years. I didn't probably look like the same person anymore. And he just thought I had a mental breakdown because he was a police officer. So John was a police officer and a detective for 10 years. And he had seen people be 5150'd. And he said, I don't believe in demonic possession. I believe in mental illness. There's something going on here. So at this point, he did not believe in God. He was not an atheist, but he didn't believe in the Christian God. He didn't know what he believed in. But he believed in science and he believed in logic. And he said, I think that there's something mentally wrong with you, and I'm going to get you help. So I'm not going to leave you, but I'm going to get you the help I think you need. And so I don't know if you want to go into how he took me to that mental institution, because that's a whole story,
Yeah, let's talk about that, because there's this dichotomy between your mom saying, this is a demon, we need to get you delivered, and then your husband, which is saying, this is a mental illness, you got to go to the hospital. So what happened?
So what ended up happening is my mom and my husband were kind of in a battle. And so I was in a holding state for about maybe 2.5 weeks. I was staying on the floor of my mom's home now because John had to go to work and I needed to be monitored 24/7 because I would do erratic, crazy things. Like try to bite glass, try to punch my hand through walls. I couldn't take a shower by myself. So they needed to surveil me 24/7. And it was a hard job. Everyone's got their own lives. both of my parents work. My little sister, God bless Christy, because she monitored and babysat me. When she was around, these things, it was like they were bound to a certain level. I can't describe it, but I almost feel like the Lord allowed, I think out of protecting my little sister, they couldn't do anything too nuts. So she would monitor me when I would go to the shower or my parents weren't home. And so it just got to the point where John got really tired of driving back and forth. And he tried to take me back home, and I would wake him up in the middle of the night, just growling and staring at him, saying, I hate you. And he was afraid that I was going to stab him or do something because he said that I would get this look on my face that didn't look anything like me. He said I could just look like pure evil. He said, but in my head, I'm just telling myself this is what mental illness looks like. So he said, I didn't feel safe even sleeping with you. So he had a conversation with my parents and said, we need to do something. And I am her husband. So I say we take her to the hospital. So my parents, my dad didn't really care, I don't think, either way. But my mom was like, well, okay, she's your wife. So if that's what you decide, according to God, and my mom knows about that, she's under your covenant. So you actually have authority over your wife. So yes, we'll do what you want to do, John, even though we don't agree with it. So they had come up with a plan to take me to the mental hospital, and I wasn't aware of it. And they just tricked me into saying that they were going to take me to this restaurant. And I had not left the house in like 2.5 weeks. So I was so excited to just get out of the house and get into sunshine. And so, like, hey, we're going to go to this restaurant. And I was kind of feeling healthy that day and wasn't like too bad. So they were like, okay, let's go. So we pile up in the car and we start driving. And about like quarter of a way there, I hear this thing that says, they're not taking you to the restaurant, they're taking you to the hospital. And I said, stop the car. Stop the car. They just told me, you're taking me to the hospital, not the restaurant. And everyone in the car is like, how does she know this? And John's looking at my dad going, did you tell her? And all of a sudden, like, I'm trying to get out of the car. Well, John locks the doors. And for some reason, the door gets unlocked and I roll out. Well, there was police officers on our tail because he had been speeding for some time and going like, I don't know, 80 or something really high in a low area where lots of kids were. And so they see me roll out of the car, and we're by this grassy area, and I'm rolling into this field and I'm just running. And now John's running after me. And then now the police officers have their guns out and they're thinking that, did he abduct this girl? What's going on? They don't know what's happening. And so all like 3 police officers are out with their guns and like, stop, stop. And John's like, don't shoot. I'm a police officer myself. I, my wife, she's gone insane and I'm trying to get her to the hospital. She got out of the car and this is what's happening. And so they're like, kind of, okay. And so for some reason, I don't know how, but they captured me. And these 3 officers can't even contain me. So I'm like, I don't know, 90 pounds. And these 3 huge officers are a lot bigger than me, can't even get me to get contained to go in the gurney because they're trying to strap me down and put me down in the gurney. And so they said, oh my gosh, we've never seen a girl this little, this strong. We can't even hold her back. And John was afraid that we're going to break my arms. Finally, I get in the ambulance and they take me to the hospital and they end up committing me there.
Okay. Wow. So much just happened in this story. I I wonder what your husband was thinking when he was seeing these things, especially in the car when you knew what was happening. You heard something tell you what was happening, but nobody had told you. That
Yeah.
probably was the first sign. I mean, I would expect from your husband to see that there's something more to this than mental illness. But
Yeah.
you did end up going to the hospital and they put you in a psych unit. And I think that was even at least I don't know how it compared to when it was when you were home, but compared to the other patients in psych unit, you were outside of any normalcy. You were kind of going insane. Do you have an idea of what was going on when you were in the psych unit? Do you remember that?
I do. I do remember a few funny things, actually. I don't usually share the funny things because people, I mean, it's a serious testimony, but when I look back at it, I'm like, that was pretty funny. But I do remember some things. And one of them was, when you're dating someone and you have this conversation of like, oh, if I'm lock me up if I'm doing this, because that means I'm crazy. So I said, well, you'll know when I'm crazy if I'm not wearing makeup and I don't work out and I eat gluten, because those are the things that I'm kind of known for. Everyone knows I'm a little OCD about certain things. And so I'm in this place, right? And it's been, I don't know, a couple of weeks, and you're not allowed to have sharp objects. There's no mirrors or anything like that. And you're drugged up, so you can't really see very clear. You can't read very well because of the medication. But there was this reflective device. It was kind of like a, you know what it was? It was a mirror that was a sticker. So it wasn't an actual piece of glass. And so I'm looking at this sticker mirror, and I'm looking at myself going, gosh, Jules, you really don't look so good. You could use some makeup. I'm like, oh, I'm not wearing makeup. And then I'm like, I'm kind of itching because I'm allergic to gluten. I'm itching my arms, and I'm looking out the window and I'm seeing people like riding their bike. I'm like, yeah, it's been a while since you worked out. I'm like, oh, wow, since I worked out. And then I'm like itching my arms going, oh my gosh, I'm itching because I'm eating gluten. I go, oh my gosh, I'm crazy. It was like I did the math in that short little scenario of like, this is defining like me not being normal. And so that was a realization for me of like, oh, I'm really like not well, right? So I'm in this place, and there was a few times where it got really bad, where I ended up running around naked. I didn't know that. In my mind, I just remember running down the hallway, but I guess I had stripped down and ran around naked. But so there was like funny little things that happened during our course of me staying there. But what was hard for John was the fact that he signed me in, but he didn't have the paperwork for me to, I don't know how to describe it, but there are medical paperworks that couples need to have over each other for them to be released. So it's HIPAA laws. So if I sign myself into the hospital, then I have to sign myself out unless my husband has this paperwork on me, which he didn't know about and he didn't have. And so um, he found out that because I didn't sign this paperwork with him, that I had to let myself out and I wasn't mentally capable of doing that. So while this was going on, he was freaking out about our finances because he didn't know how long I was going to be in there and how much that was going to cost us. And he found out that his medical insurance did not cover mental illness. So he's thinking, oh my gosh, all of our savings is going to be used up for this situation. We need to work it out outside of this. So he's starting to freak out, lose sleep now, and he calls out to God. And so here's a man who doesn't believe in anything spiritual at this point. He does believe there is a God. And he said, God, if you're real, I need help. Like, you've got to get my wife out of this situation. And he made friends with one of the nurses that would sneak him information, because even as my husband, with HIPAA law, she wasn't even allowed to tell him how I was progressing or what was happening with me. And so he got to hear a little bit about my progress, and he would check in every day. And they said, nope, she's totally out of it. Nope, she just streaked. They've got her tied up in a gurney and drugged up for a couple of days because of that. So it wasn't looking good. And he was getting more depressed as the days were going on. And finally, he called out to God and prayed for the first time. And he was crying. He said so hard. And then all of a sudden, he felt this blanket of peace just envelop him. And he was like, I feel like it's going to be okay. And that very next day, when he called, the nurse said, John, I can't believe it, but your wife is perfectly fine. She signed all the paperwork. You can come and pick her up later on today. We got to figure out when she can fully get released, but you can come and see her later on today. And so that was the beginning of things turning around for John. Um, Understanding that God didn't want to just touch me through this circumstance and change my life, but God was also touching John through this circumstance.
Yeah. So you were somehow supernaturally healed because this whole time you weren't really in control of your body, and you were in partial control, but somehow after he prayed, you regained your senses.
Yeah.
And what did your life look like when you came back home after all of this?
So let me think about that. God brought a woman into my life that invited me to her church that was like a Pentecostal church. And so I went and I just went forward for prayer one day and I just said, "Can you pray?" And then as soon as I said that, the demon started manifesting. And so I flop around on the floor like a fish and I was just throwing up stuff and it was really gnarly. But what ended up happening is I got some deliverance there and I felt a relief. And I was so excited to know that I didn't have to stay mentally tormented because I felt such relief when I went that I couldn't wait to go to church. And I would just wait till Sunday. And then she would take me again and I would manifest again. And she would be embarrassed. I'm bringing this friend that's coming with her is just causing such a ruckus. But I would just get so much relief until finally one day the Lord was like, you know, you don't need to do this anymore. Let's just do this, you and me. You don't need to go to church anymore. Just relieve your friend of this burden and let's do this together. And I was really fasting and praying and listening to the Bible. I was hearing God's voice very clearly at this time. And so I was like, wow, okay. So we're going to do this together. He goes, yes, I wrote the word. I wrote the manual on deliverance. I'm going to walk you through this. And I was like, okay. He says, take notes. So I just did whatever the Holy Spirit told me. And he instructed me to go through the Bible and go shopping, which I love that he used that term because shopping is my favorite thing to do. And so he would go through the Bible and shop for all the Bible verses on anger. And I'm like, okay. So write them all down and put them in a document. So I had on my computer a document on anger and then forgiveness and then whatever it was that I was dealing with. And the Lord said, I want you to meditate on my word, not just listen to my word without intention, but go in with the issues that you struggle with. And I want you to hear what I have to say because we need to reprogram your mind to be the mind of Christ. And the only way we're going to do that is if you fast from your old way of thinking and you start to feast on what I have to say. And so I did that. I started reading the word all night, all day, as if it was the only thing that was like food for me. And the really interesting part was the word of God is so powerful that I actually would go to bed at night and I would feel my mouth open up from the inside and I would feel things crawling out my face, crawling down my leg. I would feel the presence of like hot air come out of my mouth. I would feel steam leave. It just weird sensations like a burning snake down my leg, a spider crawling down my face. I would feel these sensations of things leaving. And there's a feeling when a spirit comes out of you, there's like a knot. It's almost like there's a separation between two spirits and you're like a knot, like they're tied together and you can feel this knot come out. So I would feel this knot and I would go, okay, that's one. Okay, that's two. And I would count in my sleep. It got to happen so often that it didn't really wake me up anymore. I would just count the knots and go right back to bed because I wanted to keep a count. After around 200, I stopped counting. And so the crazy part was I didn't actually memorize God's word. I was just reading it and reading it and reading it. I didn't consciously memorize it, but in the middle of the night, a lot of times I would wake up to the sound of my own voice speaking God's word. And as I'm speaking God's word, they're also coming out as well. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And I was like, Lord, what is that? And he said, my word is so powerful. When you fill up on me, demons can't handle it. They can't handle the atmosphere. And that's why there's such a war against Christians reading God's word, meditating on God's word, allowing God's word to not just change their mind, but change their lives by action, by acting it out, by doing what it says. And so, yeah, I just thought that was so amazing. And so I do have this love relationship with God's word.
What happened with your husband in all of this? Because he didn't believe in anything supernatural. The first sign was what happened in the car. Then, well, actually, even before that, how you transformed and you would wake up in the middle of the night saying that you wanted to kill him. You looked like a totally different person from only a weekend. And then, the whole thing with the mental hospital, then all these, this radical change and these demons coming out. What happened with him in all of this?
Well, I think that God answered his prayer. I think that was one little thing that really began to turn things around for him. God also supplied something totally supernatural with our finances. And I'm going to try and keep it really short, but long story short, he supernaturally paid my medical bills. And for John, this was a huge burden for him. And it happened in such a way where John got an amount of money that was exactly what he owed with the medical bills. And it was in from a few different people. So he got paid for a job that he did a long time ago and someone forgot to pay him. He got a gift from a client, a financial gift. And then the doctor that was assigned to my case actually said, I have 2 hardship cases a year, and I'm going to wash away a majority of your bills. The only thing you have to pay is the ambulance fee. And so, with the gift that our friend had given us and with that unexpected check, it was the exact amount of our payment. And so, John was floored by that because to him, logically speaking, that's his love language is like logic, right? And this makes sense. God's actually paying my literal bills to the T. And so that kind of moved him to believe maybe God was real. But I think the main thing that he told me was that he saw changes in me. He said, I saw things in you start to change. You got softer. And as a wife, you were just different. And I liked what I saw. And I saw the more that you read God's word, the more you were becoming like who you really were. And this hardness and all this other stuff was starting to fall off. And I liked it. And so I think that that's what drew him. And it's interesting because there's a Bible verse that says that a godly woman could lead her husband to the Lord by her spirit. And I certainly wasn't godly, but I was allowing God to change me. And I think that he was seeing that and that was impacting him a lot.
Your story is amazing because if we go back to the beginning, you wanted to serve God, but you said you were thinking that he wasn't taking care of you, so you had to do it on your own. And then everything happened, stripper, Playboy, the ritual, and all this mess of a story that you have comes to the end in such a beautiful way because now you had what you had been dreaming of this whole time. So
Yeah.
you had the husband you had been praying for all your life. You had a relationship with God, which was, even though it wasn't perfect in the beginning, it probably was better than it ever had been.
Yeah.
So it kind of came all circle, which I find that extremely beautiful. You great relationship with your husband to this day still as well. Both of you are together, even through all the hardships. So I find that extremely amazing. So I thank you for sharing that part.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that the Lord did give me everything I wanted. And I thought, oh, if I was famous or if I was rich, and I don't have any of that. I actually love being a housewife. I love ministering. I am a missionary through my website, through my YouTube channel. And so they didn't even have YouTube back in the day. So who would have thought I could minister in that way? But yes, absolutely. I'm living the life that I was designed to live. And I love my life now where I hated my life before. And it's just amazing when you let God take control. He really will give you a good life. And it's not going to be perfect, but he will take the things that you don't think are possible and he will make it possible. And I do believe he puts certain dreams in our hearts because he wants to fulfill them, because he is a good father. So I just try to do it my way. And man, did I screw it up.
Yeah, well, it ended up in something good, so there's something to be thankful for. And I want to ask you to close this out because we talked about the repercussions of what happened in your childhood and how rejection and all these things, were a big part of every single step that you took. If you could go back and have a conversation with a young Julia, what would you say to her?
Hmm, what would I say? I don't know. I would say trust God, that no matter what anyone says over you, what God has to say over you matters more than anything. And I don't know if that actually anyone could get a revelation until they grow up and they know what that actually means. But um, that the desires of your heart, you got to give it to the Lord. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. And if I would have done it that way, I think my life wouldn't have gone through all that drama. But that is my life verse now. And it's something I go back to all the time because people try to tempt you with money and this and that. And I always go, no, God, I want you. I want you. I want to serve you. I'd rather do things for free for you than to serve money and mammon, because that's when my life started to go a little sideways. So I always have to check with the Lord. Am I seeking you first? Am I putting you first? And then I know that you're going to add all these other things. And the Lord has, but always when I keep him first. So.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Almost False podcast. If you'd like to know more about Julia, we have 2 extra videos that you can find on our website by clicking the first link in the description. It'll bring you to our locals community where we have hours and hours of free content for you to enjoy. I also wanted to mention that we have some new merch available. You can go check it out by going directly to unashamed.ca. Thanks for being here and have a good one. Stay blessed.